Today, as we celebrate World Youth Skills Day, we come together around shared mission, equipping children and young people to thrive as leaders in a fast-changing world shaped by technology, global challenges, and a rapidly evolving workforce. Our theme, Building Bridges to Opportunity, Holistic Career Education, and Meaningful Employer Partnerships, speaks to our belief in co-creating impactful and sustainable opportunities for all children and youth through inclusive, collaborative, and innovative approaches. As we begin, please keep in mind three key questions. One, how can education systems embed career readiness throughout a learner's journey? How can partnerships between industry and education reinforce this integration? And what practices and conditions enable this at the school level and system level? With that, I am honored to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Hannah Kitchen. Hannah, over to you.
Thanks so much, Tariq, and thanks so much to everyone for joining today. What I'll do, as Tariq said, is just set out a few of the findings from the report that the OECD just published in May on the state of global teenage career readiness. Before I share some of the data with you, I think it's really important to underscore that for young people, knowing what they want to do in the future really does matter. So at the OECD, what we did was we looked at the available longitudinal studies that in fact covered 10 different systems. And those studies followed teenagers from their time at school into adulthood. And they found that teenagers who had a good idea of what it was they wanted to do when they were adults, so for us, we say they are career certain, they actually had better outcomes when they got to adulthood. That was in terms of both finding a job, staying in a job, and having fewer periods of unemployment. Now, many of you are probably thinking, well, actually, what I'm doing right now is really quite different from what I wanted to do when I was a teenager. But in fact, it's not so important that young people actually do the specific job they have in mind. But when they're able to name a job, that shows that there's been some reflection. It shows that there's been access to information about work. And it also shows an interest and a desire to start thinking about the future. And it's that reflection and that availability of information, which is really essential when we're thinking about school to work transitions. So many of you are probably familiar with PISA. That's the OECD survey of young people where we look at 15-year-olds in terms of their skills in maths, in terms of reading, and in terms of science. What you might be less familiar with, because most people are, is that once young people have actually done the tests around maths and reading, they then have a questionnaire and they fill in questions about how they feel about school, their life at school, and their life outside of school. And as part of that, they also provide us with information about how they see their future. And it's this information that we use when we're talking about the career readiness of 15-year-olds at the OECD. So one specific question that they answer, which enables us to understand how career certain they are, is what career it is they expect to do when they're 30. So for those who say that they have a clear idea of what they want to do, we classify them as career certain. So in 2022, these are the bars that you can see here in turquoise. On average across the OECD, so the average is shown in pink, you can see that around 6 in 10 young people were classified as career certain. What you can see as well, I hope, is that there's huge variation across countries. So if you look to the left of your screen, you can see a system like in Belgium, where in fact less than 3 in 10 students were career certain. If you move to the right of your screen, you can see systems like Costa Rica and Macau, China, where in fact more than 8 in 10 students were career certain. One of the things I think is really remarkable, though, is that if you look at career certainty in the past and you compare it with now, you can see that the career certainty of young people is actually declining. So the blue diamonds show career certainty from PISA 2025. And if you look across all of the systems, you can see that young people in 2022 were less career certain than their peers in 2015. So for example, if you look at the OECD, so again shown in pink, you can see the pink diamond. So in 2015, around 8 in 10 students were career certain, compared with 6 in 10 students in 2022. And then you can see some really remarkable shifts across different systems. So for example, in Argentina and in Peru, and also in the UK, and also in Poland. If we think back to what was happening in 2022, it was just after the pandemic. So, of course, the global context was really quite unstable. But I think that underlines even more when the global context is less stable, that school systems have a really critical role to play in terms of providing information for young people, but also, of course, the experiences that enable them to develop a clear idea of what it was they want to do in the future. So if we think about within systems and across systems, who are the people who are the most career certain, or perhaps more importantly, the least career certain? So across the OECD overall and across all the countries participating in PISA, we can see that boys are greatest risk of career uncertainty. So across the OECD on average, girls are almost 5 percentage points more likely to be career certain than boys. That's not the case in all countries. So those of you who are looking carefully, you can see that there are 4 systems where that's not the case. So in particular in Denmark, we don't see that girls are more career certain, but that is the case across many systems. And if you look towards the right of your screen, you can see some systems where that difference is really quite starkly pronounced. So I think you have here, I think we have Jordan and Albania, also Greece, and also Japan, where in fact girls are almost 10 percentage points more likely to be career certain than boys. If we think about disadvantaged students, so students who are coming from perhaps the most socially disadvantaged and economically, socially disadvantaged groups, across the OECD on average, those groups of students are almost 10 percentage points more likely to be uncertain compared with their more advantaged peers. Again, of course, there's differences across countries. So if you look to the left of the screen, you can see that there are 8 systems where that's not the case. And that includes Croatia. It also includes Ireland. But for many systems, there is quite a significant difference, in particular in Guatemala, also in Brazil, in Korea, and also in Finland. So I wanted to finish by just sharing with you some of the ideas that seem really important for us at the OECD in terms of better understanding how we can collaborate globally to support young people to have a really clear idea of where it is they want to go in the future. So first is, of course, what works for different groups of students, in particular thinking about boys and girls, and also different groups in terms of social advantage. First area is around exploring barriers to access, and that can be both seen and unseen because we know that young people from more advantaged backgrounds tend to naturally have access to stronger social networks and social capital, which enables them to develop that clearer sense of where it is they want to go. More focused programs, so perhaps specifically for different groups of students, but also thinking about different careers as well. And then finally, one of the things that we're particularly interested in looking at the OECD is developing a self-assessment tool that students, or in fact teachers and their schools, might use to develop a sense of who are the young people who are at risk of being less career ready than their peers. So that's a self-assessment tool that might ask you questions like, how many adults have you spoken to about what you'd like to do in the future? Or have you undertaken any research about what you'd like to do in the future? And those types of tools would enable systems to identify specific groups of students who perhaps need greater support around their career preparation. The next area is thinking about what works best for students and schools. And in particular here, thinking about what types of delivery models might work really well. So for example, is it really important to have the whole of the school involved in the delivery of career guidance? An area that I think is particularly important is the role of subject-specific teaching. So does it matter, for example, if you're teaching maths or science or in languages, to make explicit connections between the skills that are being taught and potential career pathways? And then finally, the role of career guidance professionals. I think globally across systems, it's in fact an area which is relatively unprofessionalized. And so it would be really interesting to understand what is important in terms of entry-level qualifications, but also continuous professional development in terms of what's associated with better outcomes for young people in careers. And then finally, but of course, really centrally, is the collaboration between schools and employers. One of the things that we do quite a bit at the OECD is that we're able to speak to employers. And it's very interesting because if you go to pretty much every system, employers will tell you, we have young people who have strong qualifications and they finish school with very good certificates. But in fact, what they really miss are those transferable skills like communication, like autonomy, and like independence, which mean they're able to function effectively in the work environment. And so there seems to be a big gap or a big role to play for exploring the collaboration between education systems and employers, in particular because those two groups share very common aims in terms of supporting young people to develop smooth transitions into the work environment. So in particular, something that we'd like to do at the OECD is to explore research looking at how employers and education systems can effectively share expectations, how that collaboration can be systemic, and finally, when that collaboration does occur, perhaps in terms of internships or in terms of work experience or work shadowing, how can we ensure that they're really useful and rewarding experiences for students? Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Recognizing that most teenagers need support to access to opportunities that prepare them for future careers and achieve career certainty, and that uncertainty is greatest where opportunity is most needed, powerfully underscores why career education must be a core part of every learner's experience. And actually, this is not just about supporting students. It's also about meeting workforce needs, driving economic growth, and shaping a more prosperous future for all. Building on the data and insights and the questions recently shared by Hannah, we're now ready to dive deeper into our panel. Our panelists bring a wealth of experience and insights from education, industry, career readiness program, and youth leadership. Together, they will explore how this work is being implemented across diverse contexts and what it takes to make meaningful progress. Jonas Fatih will be moderating the panel.
Thank you very much, Tarek, and thank you very much, Hannah, for these really valuable insights. I found some of these data points really surprising, and you can see in the chat as well that they resonated and provoked lots of different thoughts and questions. So I'm really hoping that this will, or expecting actually, that this will be having an impact across our community here. So as Tarek said, we'll now explore our topics from a broader range of perspectives, which is from our fantastic panel. But before I introduce our panel, please remember there will be breakout rooms after, in which we would like all of your input too. So we would like to gain input from the broadest possible range of perspectives. You all who are here will be put into breakout rooms later. And each breakout room will focus on one key question. You find these key questions in the chat as well. William has shared them a little bit earlier. And just to reiterate them, so the first question is in the first breakout room will be about how can the education systems integrate career education across the entire student journey, adopting a holistic approach that prepares students to thrive as adaptable leaders and in a rapidly evolving world. The second breakout room is about how education industry partnerships can contribute to integrating career education across the entire student journey. That might be at the school level, it might also be at the system level. And the third question is, what conditions and practices at the school and systems levels are necessary to integrate holistic career education throughout the student journey and establish meaningful industry partnerships that ensure relevant and transformative career readiness opportunities. So these three questions, please keep them in mind when you're listening to our speakers, as I know they will share very stimulating contributions toward these topics, just like Hannah did just now. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce our fantastic panelists. Our first panelist is Luisel Valencia. She is a student alumna of Enseña Peru and coordinates a national initiative to help students become real change makers. Welcome, Luisel. Our second panelist is Priyanka Sanghai. She's the Joint Executive Director at Antarang Foundation, an organization focused on embedding career education into the public school system in India. Welcome, Priyanka. Our next panelist is Saiful Akash. He's the CEO and founder of the Bangladesh-based organization AltLearn, an initiative integrating career education into school curricula. Welcome, Akash. And our next panelist is Alexandra Ingverson. She's the Vice President of Global Philanthropy at JP Morgan Chase, and as such responsible for the EMEA region. Welcome, Alex. Great to have you here. So, how will we run this panel? Panelists, you all know what you got yourselves into, but for our audience, just a quick overview of how we would like to run this. So we will have a 5-minute warm-up session where I have one opening question, and that question goes to every panelist, and I'll give all of you about a minute to speak. And then we will have a 15-minute focused question round. So we've gathered some questions before as well, and I'll ask you a question, and I'll give you about 90 seconds to respond, and also to draw maybe insights and connections to other people's responses. And we will then open up for a 10-minute open discussion round amongst all of you. So going deeper into any topic that you as panelists might find interesting. And the idea is that then at the end, in 4 minutes, we will do a recommendation round where each of you, based on the conversation, can share a recommendation that you think would be well, recommendable. And in the end, we'll have a 10-minute Q&A session where I will gather about 4 questions from the chat, and we'll just respond to audience questions. So that is our plan. And to kick us off, I will pose the opening question, and I have a timer on my watch. I will raise my hand when there is 1 minute. So 1 minute each. The question is, considering the rapid changes in the global landscape and workforce, what do you think is the single most critical shift or opportunity you see for career education? Luisel, would you like to start?
Yo soy de Perú y creo que la gran oportunidad está en hacer de la orientación vocacional un componente transversal del currículo, conectado con experiencias reales facilitadas por el mundo laboral. Acá en Perú, la orientación vocacional ofrecida en las escuelas es limitada y espontánea, y mayormente solo ocurre en el último año de secundaria. En ese sentido, el cambio más crítico sería abarcar la educación para la carrera en el currículo o como curso adicional en el último año, e ir escalando hasta lograr que éste se enseñe desde el primer año de secundaria con acompañamiento personalizado a cada alumno. De esta manera, los estudiantes se pueden sentir más preparados al tomar decisiones informadas sobre su futuro, como por ejemplo escoger su carrera. Gracias.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And really salient points that also touch on the question or the points made in the chat. So thank you. Next up, Priyanka, would you like to respond to the opening question?
Yeah, I think some of the things that we are seeing in the space of career education, I think one of the shifts has really been about the broadening focus from skilling to just understanding that career education is a lot more holistic and it's about building young people's aspiration. I think 2 other shifts that we are seeing is, one, school is now continued to be recognized as this center and space to provide career education for young people. Right, in India, we're seeing it as a part of the national education policy that mandates career education in schools. And I think the third one I would say in terms of a shift has just been around building the need to build an ecosystem around the student, where this ecosystem consists of both industry, young people, schools, alumni, parents, and really them together working towards embedding career education in a more holistic manner and as a comprehensive model.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Akash, what would you say is the single most critical shift or opportunity you see for career education from your vantage point?
In Bangladesh, when I was a fellow of KISS for Bangladesh, I did a project called Onward. During that time, I actually explored this paradigm. And what I think is we teachers should do is what Luis also acknowledged, that we should actually embed career readiness framework to our daily lesson plans. So what I did during my project is I called it career informed pedagogy. So the framework was career readiness framework suggests that students should get the exposure, and they should get the chance to explore and practice the skill, knowledge, and mindset that required for their future career. So if we can, as a teacher, embed this framework into our daily lesson plans, then there a lot of challenges might reduce. Like lot of people, what they do is run isolated and separate career education program, after school program. So sometimes that might not work. If we try to actually incorporate career readiness framework into our daily lessons, then that might actually change the or shift the career readiness paradigm actually. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Alex, what would you think is the single most critical shift or opportunity you see?
Thank you, Jonas, for this question. I think that, and I think it was a pattern also in what a lot of the other panelists were saying, but increasingly, if we're going to enable these successful working lives and careers for the future workforce, we really need to think about and how we consider and how we perceive the education journey. It isn't anymore linear. It will require a lot of continuous learning opportunities, curiosity, growth mindsets that can really set up for these long-lasting skills and career journeys. So really the opening for the more of a continuum in this work.
Super interesting. Thank you very much. I think you've all already touched on lots of different things that we talked about in our preparation in terms of our more focused question round. And I would like to pick up this question around weaving holistic career education throughout the years, because the question would be, how can we effectively do that? How can we effectively weave holistic career education throughout the primary and secondary years, rather than just these isolated programs or late stage interventions that you described? And I would like to ask that question of Priyanka first, maybe.
I think, thank you, Jonas. That's a really interesting question, and I saw a similar one on chat as well. I think what we are seeing is from our work is, and we begin work in class 9, and what we're seeing is almost 97% of young people at class 9, which is 13, 14 years of age, have already chosen a career aspiration. And what typically happens is these aspirations are chosen with limited awareness, which then eventually results in a lot of cases of just low wage, low skill work, and perpetuates that cycle of poverty, especially for the most marginalized young people. Right? So I think, like Akash also spoke about, what's really needed to integrate it is really one, I think, to have a structured curriculum that's grade appropriate for careers, right from the primary age to secondary and then higher secondary school. So I think that one. The second one I would say is also, while there is a curriculum, having this group or a cadre of really trained career facilitators that can actually deliver this curriculum and guide students effectively to their personalized career pathways. I think three other things that we've sort of learned from our experience of integrating career education is also, I think, having a dedicated time in the school timetable to offer career education programs. So while some part of it can be integrated as a subject, having dedicated career awareness, skill building, self-awareness sessions is really, really critical. And I think the fourth I would say is the measuring where students are going and how informed are the transitions that they are making from school to college or vocational pathways or employment. So I would say these are four or five of the key things that would really make it sustainable.
Wonderful, thank you. Akash, what do you think would help to effectively weave this throughout the years, and maybe what are the biggest practical hurdles that you've seen, and how might you have overcome them?
Okay, what Priyanka said, I actually agreed those things. She acknowledged about the how disadvantaged or marginalized community children actually suffering the most. So, what in my experience, in my context, the thing actually Priyanka recommended that school could dedicated some time for the career education. In some school in Bangladesh, actually, we cannot have that much time. So that's why I am emphasizing on embedding career readiness framework to actually lesson plans. So make it career informed pedagogy. So if I give an example, so if we want to teach force and energy to a 7th grade students, what we can do is start the lesson with a wheelie gig toy. Then we can instruct the students to make their one with a rope and a cardboard recycle maybe. So then that's where they can engage with that. And what we can introduce here is interesting. So there is a team from Stanford University, Manu Prakash lab. So they made a paper fuse. The concept is centrifugal machine, but made with paper. So with a capillary tube, if we attach the blood sample with that and rotate it, then the heavier particle due to the centrifugal force separate outward. So that's how we can actually teach the students the core concept of science like centrifugal force or force and energy. And then we can introduce how bioengineering actually works. What are the things they are learning in their primary and secondary years will translate in their future career. That's how a student will have the clarity and sometimes my student ask the thing I am learning now, how will this actually help me in my future? So this question can be solved through this approach. So that's how actually we can teach our student or ready our student for the future of career. And the thing you asked, the what are the hurdles in Bangladesh? I think teachers are going through a lot of things with regular activities. Even the teachers have to participate in works like vaccination, election duties. So running a separate and isolated career program might be challenging for them. So if we can actually train our teachers such a way that Priyanka also mentioned that we need trained teachers so that they can actually groom our students. So I am in on All Learn. What we are doing is we are preparing a training module for the teachers so that we can actually train them on career informed pedagogy, and they can implement this concept in the classroom. That's how we can actually transform the classroom to a career club or career hub where a student actually get the exposure, get the chance to explore and practice the skill, knowledge, and mindset required for their future. Thank you, Jonas.
Great, thank you. Those are great examples of how to integrate and connect the learning to career. And building on that, so Alex, you've supported in your work lots of career readiness and employer partnerships. what do you think are some key observations on what it takes to make these partnerships between career readiness and employers work? Career readiness programs and employers. There we go.
Yes.
That was the word.
Great. So I think in this context, right, of these accelerated skills need, it really puts this emphasis on the need for work exposure and experience in earlier stages. So similar to what we've heard already from the other panelists. But I think here it's the links between education and employers to really ensure this connectivity and more real-time skills need and experience. Being able to have this support between education and employers just throughout our lives, not just throughout education. And this requires some new structures, some new ways of working to build these connectivity, and also being able to adjust that depending on the stage of education or kind of proximity to the labor market. Also here, we need to think about different contexts require different solutions. So great to see ways that local chambers, industry associations, for example, can support also smaller and medium enterprises that may want to engage young people, but may lack the tools or resources to know where to begin. And I think this is a good way to ensure that good models can scale.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so locality and best practice is like linking the two of them and linking employers into that element. Great, thank you. And from the education side, so Akash, what are the most impactful ways to initiate and sustain these collaborations so that you actually have highly relevant content?
In a under-resourced school where the main constraint is resource. So what I did is I partnered with nearby universities. In each university in Bangladesh, there are lots of volunteering organizations led by students. So what we can do, we can mobilize their resources to give the exposure and give the chance to explore our students. Like, for example, I invited IoT in our school. There was a team, a robotics team. So what they did, they showed our student the robot they make, soccer board and Mars rover, and they introduce the sensors and basic of codings. That's way students get the exposure in robotics and coding. So that's how we can actually utilize the resources available around us, partner with local universities or businesses, so that our teachers can request or approach those businesses so that they give the access to our inventory or innovation lab. That's or field visit opportunity to our students. That's how a student got the exposure. So what I did during my project is I follow a framework of CRMA, holding co-creation or collaborative space, resource mobilization, and advocacy. So that's how we can actually prepare our student and face the challenges of low resource or other constraints. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And Priyanka, in your experience, what does it need to sustain these collaborations?
I think very similar to what Alexander and Akash spoke about, right? I think there's a need to really build these either district or local level ecosystems that really map schools, universities to local industries nearby and help them really partner with each other to provide effective career education or exposure that's needed, right? And technology may be then a great way to really scale and both contextualize these experiences for industry and school. I think the second one I would say is also a little bit to what Alexander touched upon in the opening, which is education is really no longer linear. So really, how can frameworks like a credit-based system really account for this non-linearity, right? The shift between education, schooling to vocational to employment. And this is something in India we've seen with the introduction of the National Credit Framework, right? It takes into account every young person has multiple entry-exit points, and how can accumulation of these credits really prepare young people in different ways for career education. But I think having said that, what I think the most critical element is also, I think, to look at industry not just as this consumer of graduates, but almost a co-partner in the journey, right? So right from not just at delivery, but right from conceptualization to design to development, how can industry and the education system really co-partner um, in preparing young people for their careers? I think that would be most critical to sustain this.
That is a wonderful phrase, seeing industry not just as a consumer of graduates. I think this will stick with me for a long time. Luisel, so you're closest in your experience to this. How does what you've heard from Alex, from Akash and Priyanka, how does that align with your own experience? And is there anything else that school industry partnerships could do to expand the opportunities for students throughout their experience in education?
Mi escuela anterior y muchas escuelas de Perú ofrecen cursos técnicos a partir del tercer año de secundaria, donde pueden aprender peluquería, cosmetología o repostería. Aunque adquirir estas habilidades puede parecer insignificante, fortalece la autoestima porque logran aumentar significativamente la motivación de los estudiantes y su claridad sobre posibles trayectorias. Por ejemplo, yo me siento así al trabajar con Enseña Perú. Sin embargo, en las escuelas, luego de aprender estas habilidades, es el estudiante quien tiene que buscar oportunidades laborales. Alguien joven, sin experiencia y sin un currículo pulido, no tiene muchas probabilidades de lograrlo. Para expandir oportunidades necesitamos alianzas más estratégicas, con compromiso a largo plazo y mentorías hasta que los estudiantes logren una plaza. Las empresas pueden involucrarse en la formación de docentes, facilitar espacios de aprendizaje técnico, compartir tendencias del sector e incluso ofrecer los puestos de trabajo. De esa manera, desde la escuela secundaria y antes de la universidad, los estudiantes ya tienen una experiencia específica en oportunidades laborales.
That really connects incredibly well with what Priyanka just said, right? Industry as real partners, not just consumers. And Luisel, I will actually attach one more question now in terms of equitable access. What do you think are the most significant barriers preventing all students, not just the privileged ones, but also those who might come from disadvantaged backgrounds, from accessing such quality career education opportunities? So what are the most significant barriers in your experience?
Creo que uno de los mayores obstáculos es la desigualdad estructural de acceso a recursos y redes. Esto es en las comunidades alejadas debido a aspectos geográficos y falta de conexión a redes online. Los estudiantes no tienen acceso a modelos a seguir, información clara sobre el mundo del trabajo, ni experiencias significativas que los conecten con sus intereses y talentos. También creo que existe una fragmentación de esfuerzos. La educación para la carrera suele estar limitada, como ya se dijo, a momentos aislados y no se integra en las acciones pedagógicas cotidianas. A esto se le suma la falta de formación docente en el enfoque de desarrollo vocacional y las barreras culturales y expectativas, donde algunos estudiantes no son alentados a soñar con ciertos tipos de carrera debido a sesgos o estereotipos. Por ejemplo, las mujeres o las niñas hacia las carreras STEM. Igualmente, en muchos países latinoamericanos se motiva a los estudiantes a ingresar a una universidad, mas no a perseguir una carrera que de verdad se alinee con sus pasiones. Esto genera que estén motivados principalmente por los ingresos que puede generar su carrera y no cómo esto va a ayudarles a realizarse personalmente.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And then I would like to ask two more questions, and then we'll go to a quick discussion round because we would like to have enough time for the breakout rooms as well. So I have two more questions. I'll ask them both at the same time from different people. So Priyanka, what do you think, what can we do to change the situation to ensure all students have access to opportunities? And then Alex, maybe you have some examples of effective partnerships that promote social mobility in a way. So Priyanka, what can we do to change the situation and ensure access?
Yeah, I think what Lucille spoke about it's something that we just need to outright acknowledge when it comes to career education, right? There are these social inequalities and they significantly impact today how young people transition into education, employment, or training. Uh, some of the ways, at least in the way we look at it, is while there are certain fundamental and building blocks to what effective career education programs do need to offer, how can we really look at some of these additional strands that young people need beyond the standardized programs and really identify solutions and implement those specific solutions in their local context? All right. So I think that would be one. The second is really one of the ways to reach the marginalized and especially the most vulnerable young people is in school. Today, with enrollment rates increasing, school is really the place where we can find these young people, and it's also the most trusted and credible source that they see for information. So, really, how can schools be this place where career education is offered? I think the third, which Lucille spoke a lot about, is just seeing your own self as a role model and possible, right? Where girls are probably not encouraged to get into STEM careers. So, how can we help all young people build what you could say is almost this human and social capital? So, there is this engagement with mentors, with industry. I can see more of me. In the people who are currently in the workforce, and how can those collaborations be built stronger between industry and school? There would be some of the ways to really make this access a lot more equitable for young people.
That makes complete sense, particularly also the role model element, I find. Alex, do you have can you share some examples of effective partnerships where they have where these partnerships have effectively promoted career readiness in terms of social mobility as well?
Yes, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of the examples of the work that we've been doing as well with partners. So one that I would like to highlight is with Excellence en Escuelas que Inspiran in Spain, together with Fundación Bertelsmann and Empieza a Educar. Over the past 5 years, they worked to provide a framework and infrastructure to support young people in secondary education experience the world of work, creating really systems change and large scale efforts here in close partnerships with employers, public administration. And this program is now in hundreds of schools across regions in Spain, giving young people access to guidance, work experience, and in the long term, good career outcomes. Another opportunity or another program maybe to highlight is the Aspiring Professionals program in the UK. So as an employer, we know how important it is to provide work experience to young people. In the UK for 10 plus years now with the Social Mobility Foundation, we've supported over 900 young people in this program to do work experience in finance and tech roles within JP Morgan Chase. And this program was really set up to broaden access to finance and tech pathways. And participants in these programs have gone on into top universities and onwards into really rewarding careers. Yeah, maybe two programs to share there. And I know there are many more who've created great impact here, including several that you've just heard from here today as well.
That is fantastic. Thank you very much. And I think it ties into a lot of the good practice that we've seen as well, right? In terms of sharing experience and accessing different different experiences. I would like, just in terms of time, I would like to skip the discussion round, if that's okay, because we've taken a little bit more time with the focused questions, and we'll just go directly into the recommendation round so that we can then have enough time for the breakout rooms and for our webinar participants to share points as well. So I would like to move into the recommendation rounds and ask all of you in about 30 seconds, what is one key recommendation, doesn't matter at which level, school or system, just one recommendation that you believe has the greatest potential to ensure students access career education throughout their educational journey? Let's go backwards from unusual order. So Alex, can I invite you first? What is your one key recommendation?
You know, the key salient piece and something that's come so much in our discussion today, career readiness, it's at the nexus of education institutions, public policy, private industry, and collaboration across all will be required in order to do this well. Otherwise, we will not be able to have this career readiness for the next generation at scale and pace that we need to keep up with the skills need.
Thank you very much. Akash, what do you think is your one key recommendation with the greatest
So
potential?
I would like to recommend all the teachers or policymakers to integrate the career readiness framework into their daily pedagogy. So career informed pedagogy might be the key recommendation from me, because it have the potential to reduce the inclusivity challenges we are facing. So this way might be we can make career education inclusive.
Thank you very much. And then Priyanka, what is your one recommendation?
Yeah, I would build on what Akash said and reiterate that I think school-based comprehensive career education is a must. It's the only way to make it accessible, equitable, and make sure that career transitions are a norm. And really to complement that from the policymaker end of having just dedicated time in the school timetable for career education programs to take place.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Luisel, what is your one key recommendation?
Una recomendación clave es que, como los compañeros ya mencionaron, cada escuela cuente con un plan institucional para educación para la carrera, con objetivos claros por nivel educativo, articulado al currículo que las alianzas pueden ayudar a construir, y con roles asignados y capacitación para docentes, orientadores y actores externos.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I think the message could not be louder. It feels like all of you effectively said almost the same thing with slightly different takes. So I think this is great for our outcome notes, at least. We can share this with lots of people. I'd like to thank all of you again, Luisel, Priyanka, Akash, and Alex, for your valuable contributions. I found it hugely insightful and motivating as well, because I think it's absolutely doable. It is very pragmatic and something that can make a big difference without that much, without like having to change the world, so to speak. Which is fantastic. Now we'd like to transition to the breakout rooms. We now have a reporting back session. So the first one is Noemi with the question, what changes are needed in the curriculum to integrate career education, and how can teachers and parents actively support this? So Noemi, what did you talk about, and what are your two key insights and or recommendations?
Thank you so much, Jonas. Well, we were very engaged in the conversation, as Yvette shared. So we shared lots of different things. The first one, and more important, we highlight the importance of government investment and government awareness into career readiness. We have some governments that are kind of aware about career readiness, especially in our group. It was the UK, Italy, and Spain somehow. But then some others are not invested in this, and you can see that the schools and especially the students don't benefit from that. So what we all share about is about the holistic approach and the importance of making sure that we connect different stakeholders into the school. For example, we mentioned not only the government, but also universities, other schools, local businesses, somebody said families too. So different stakeholders. And we also talk about how teachers should have some ideas and some expectations on how much time they have to take out from the curriculum to talk explicitly about career readiness, and how important it is to make sure that the teachers do that during their lessons. And we also talk about something really attention calling, that some countries have career readiness during primary education, and then during secondary education, when it's like most important, we forget about it because we focus more on students' behavior. Keeping in mind that if students are invested in their own career and readiness, they will probably behave properly. So we were talking about all these different topics, and it was really interesting. I wanted to thank people in my group for being so participative.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing these insights. That's really, really interesting, and of course makes a lot of sense in terms of government awareness and the holistic multi-stakeholder approach, and also the challenges of primary education, and then maybe in secondary education there are subjectively different problems. But we could address them differently. So for our second group, Yvette, would you like to share some insights from around the question, how can education industry partnerships effectively integrate career education throughout the entire student journey? And in what ways can these partnerships create lasting and meaningful impact?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, of course, we all agreed in the need of building bridges between companies and schools, and not only students, but the schools as a whole. I will develop this a little bit more now. And some participants also shared that in their land territories, the companies are not finding what they need, and also the schools are not aware of what companies are looking for. And also a very meaningful example from Susie from Teach for All inspired us in the sense that she shared that the Career and Enterprise company started with a pilot where the teachers go to the companies to learn more about the human resources department of the talent departments in the companies, and they learn in firsthand what companies need, how these teachers are doing in their subjects then can be related to the professional world, and basically all this knowledge that they experience there, it's brought back to the school and to the students. That we talk about the importance to keep the teachers motivated and engaged, and to see the meaning of what they are doing, and also we talk that in some places like the number of students and like it's so huge, also that and also like the diversity of the territory. Sometimes we are in more remote areas, and the solution that can work in big cities maybe cannot work in rural areas. So this is not a solution, but we brought the question that how can we develop solutions that can work for different contexts, and basically a little bit the conclusion would be that a school is something else than the students, teachers, that we can find different formulas or ways to bring these two worlds together. Sometimes it will be possible to go directly to students, or to students visit the companies or do job shadowings, wherever, and sometimes that will not be possible, and we would have to work on teachers to work later on students on all this knowledge, or also the importance of working on soft skills with the students, and to bring more equality to their possible future opportunities at work.
Thank you very much. And it also resonates with some of the things that we said earlier in the panel, right? With like local solutions that we can then, if the context is right, potentially learn from elsewhere. Thank you. And then our breakout room 3, fostering student agency and leadership in career education. So Pedro, your question was, how are we seeing student voices being turned into action and students actively shaping career education and its impact? So what did you talk about and what are your key insights?
Okay, thank you, Jonas. I believe that the idea shared in my group, they were not very far from what we have been hearing in these events from now. But first of all, I would like to say thank you from my group. We had some great insights, and I would like to think about 3 key recommendations, maybe, that just reinforce what we have heard here. First of all, is to help students to connect with people from different industries so they can discover new careers and expand their view of the world. As OECD always repeats in their events, the students cannot be what they can't see. The second key point here was to create opportunities for students to work on real-life projects with support from industry mentors. So mentorship is something that can help students to be listened, be empowered. And the first key insight that we got was to promote inclusive career readiness programs that evaluate different students' profile and align with what companies of all sizes can really offer. So we can think that students, they have a diversity, but also companies are different. They can do great jobs in specific areas depending on their capacity. So I think that those are the main points that we discussed. I would like really to say thank you for my group to share with me their ideas. That's it.
Thank you very much. So certainly hugely insightful conversations. And now I'm very happy to welcome back to the stage Tarek Shahidi, our event host from the Global Career Education Network.
Thank you for all the 3 groups for sharing such thoughtful and insightful recommendations from the small groups. It's clear that whether we are focused on embedding career education, embedding career readiness into education, or building strong industry education partnerships, or centering student leadership, there's incredible momentum from what we are hearing and seeing today, and also shared commitment across our global community. As we wrap up, I want to thank each of you, the speakers, the keynote, the participants, those who are behind stage that Jonas mentioned earlier, for the big part of today's truly energizing conversation. I hope you are leaving with fresh ideas, new connections, and a renewed sense of what is possible when we come together across sectors and geographies to reimagine how we prepare young people for their futures. Throughout today's session, through research, lived experience, and promising practices, we heard that holistic career education and meaningful employer partnerships are not just nice to have, they are a must-have. So if something resonated with you, if you are working on similar efforts or curious about how we might collaborate, we'd love to hear from you. Teach for All's Future Work Initiative is a platform that connects, we learn together and build together, and we are always looking to grow with like-minded partners. If you also want to learn more about the Global Career Education Network, we invite you to explore our newly released 2-pager. Please see the link in the chat. It captures some key insights from the first year of the network and outlines our priorities for shared learning and collective action for this coming year. So once again, thank you for your time, your insights, and most importantly, for the work you do every day to ensure that children and young people everywhere are equipped to thrive and lead the future they will inherit. Take care, stay connected, and we look forward to building more bridges together. Thank you.